welcome to the first edition of Flute and Drum in conjunction with Loyalist FM, the first ever online Loyalist programming dedicated to possibly the single biggest musical cultural phenomenon in Western Europe, the Loyalist marching band movement. I'll be your host, Quincey, and over the coming weeks, Flute and Drum will be delving into the marching band world and talking to some of the most respected and influential figures within the many tens of thousands of people who dedicate a large part of their lives to Loyalist flute bands. This week, Flute and Drum will be visiting the world of one of Ulster's most well-known bands, East Belfast Protestant boys, via their colourful chairman and proprietor of the Union Jack shop, John Keenan, alias China. China, you're in the Prod boys for a long time. How did you first come to be involved in the band?
Well, basically, it's probably the same as everybody else. It was through friendships. The time I joined the band, it was really the start of the early troubles, the 70s. I was in the Junior Orange Order. I vaguely remember I was master of the Junior Orange Lodge at that time. And believe it or not, the band we had at my home was a band with car defenders. But the boys down the street, who were friends, had just joined the local band around the corner. So lo and behold, before you knew it, I was up at the practice.
Not been cheeky or anything, China. What sort of age would you have been at that time?
Probably about 15.
About 15. Would there be a lot of your friends sort of calling into the band scene at that time as well, because of the troubles in the political situation?
There were indeed. At that time, you'd probably have joined anything. That's the way the scene was at that time. Everybody seemed to be involved with something. There was a big, shall we say, the Orange Order was getting bigger and bigger at that time, and everybody was joining the Orange Order and joining bands. You seemed out of place if you didn't join, and that was the way it went, you know.
And what are your first memories of the way that the band originally worked whenever you joined?
I didn't really know any better, but I thought it was great. It was very basic type of uniform with a dicky bow and a red jumper, believe it or not.
Excellent.
It was like a golfing jumper with a reindeer on it, and the wee reindeer was actually jumping. And the trousers were maybe 3 times too big, and a big floppy hat with a plume on it, 12 inches long. But everybody thought it was great, and you were learning all the wee tunes and all.
What the emphasis was on just getting onto the road and parading on the road? And
that's it, exactly how it was. It didn't matter many tunes you knew. You were just out on the street. Nobody asked you many tunes you knew.
What sort of tunes did you play at that time?
At that time you were probably playing Holy Mary and Brigden Derry and the Ducks of Mara Lynn.
Oh, classics.
Yep. These tunes never seem to go away. They disappear now and again, but they always seem to make a wee re-insurgence, you know.
Well, that's definitely a feature of the whole band movement as a whole. What way could you see the Protestant boys developing? When did the things start to change? When did everything start to get a wee bit tighter?
Yeah, in those early days, most bands were probably all the same. They all played the same tunes, had the same style. They didn't really have big, massive bands. I can remember even the Prod boys, we thought it was great because we had maybe 8 drummers out one day and with 2 different colours of drums and things like that. Most bands were all the same. But things started to change really around about the time of the 80s. I would say before the Anglo-Irish Agreement. Things like that. The police were starting to put tighter controls on the bands regarding forms and parade routes. Cameras were starting to come into things.
You were still a young fella then. Tell me who the bands on the road that you remember being the bands, the most well-known bands.
The bands back in those days would probably be, you would certainly have the Gertrude Star there, and you had the Ballybean, the James Beattie, Memorial from Tullycarnet. The melody bands in those days were a big noise, the likes of the Balmacarts and the Preda Ravens. Those bands had a lot of respect in those days, and the ordinary kick and poke bands were exactly what they were. Always seemed to be a step behind the melody bands, and it was always the melody bands seemed to take a limelight.
When, again, China, did that start to change? When can you see that changing?
It really changed all of a sudden when in the 80s when a band from Scotland came over called the Black Skull, and I think they had a big influence on the marching scene. Another band that impressed me in those days was not a local band, a band in Ballymena called Pride of Maine. I always admired the Pride of Maine because they always seemed to be light years ahead of everybody else. In those days, they would have maybe 12 or 14 drummers, and that wasn't totally unheard of in Belfast. I had a big band. They were well turned out. Their tunes were light years ahead of everybody else. Tunes I'd never heard of in my life, and to me, the Pride of Maine had a very, very big influence on the whole band scene, as well as the Black Skull, who seemed to bring a lot more style and decorum. And then, lo and behold, there was bands here starting to copy, and bands such as the Sharpshooters, who were probably one of the first bands.
Well, that's the famous band. The
famous band with the Sharpshooters at one time. And what I'm proud of to say is that probably a lot of the members of the Sharpshooters learned their trades in bands like the Pro Boys, like Outridge Stars.
What would have been the stimulation for the Protestant boys then to start and tighten up their act? That would have been purely the activities of the Sharpshooters and the melody bands.
I suppose in those days it was a big kick up the, shall we say, behind for all the bands who seemed to, shall we say, well, if they can do it, we can do it. That was the sort of attitude, or can we do anything different? Certainly the styles all started to change from jumpers to box jackets and 2 or 3 stripes down their trousers and this type of thing. Most bands in those days started to change very, very quickly. But they all seem to originate from the Sharpshooters, who seem to bring the style, and that quickly spread throughout Northern Ireland.
Well, the Sharpshooters are off the road a long time now, but they're still talked about a lot.
Yes, they are talked about it in a big way. I suppose everything about it riding good, and it was a real shock when I went off the road. But I suppose all things come to an end, but all our bands is going twice as long all over the country. And they're all doing a good job, and the sharpshooters, believe it or not, would maybe find it hard to compete with some bands at the moment. Another band from Scotland who had a big influence at that time was a band called Pride of Mail. They were really an unknown band to me at that time. But when I seen them, I really took them to my heart. And once I heard one of their tapes, Smile, that was it. Their style, they were really a wee small band, but their style was very distinctive. And it seemed to maybe suit the type of kick-a-poke bands at that time could, shall we say, copy of Nat and Hans. The Pride of Mail are now defunct, but I think their influence was a big thing too, along with the Black Skull.
In what way did the Protestant boys most noticeably change from the old style kick the poke to the new blood and thunder?
I think a big kick up the bum for the Protestant boys, if I can put it that way, at one time was when we had a split in the band. A certain number of boys in the band seemed to want to break away and form their own band. And I think that too was a big wake-up call for the Protestant boys, because it seemed to be that the two sides were trying to outdo each other. I'm glad to say that the Protestant boys, I reckon, have come out on top. The other band in question was the East Belfast Rising Sons. And, still managing to put a half-decent wee band on the road. I think that was a big wake-up call for the Protestant boys.
And that was in the 80s, China, was it?
Yeah.
After the split within the band, what were the first things the Prod boys started to change?
Mm-hmm. Well, what we tried to do at that time, apart from recruit and try and boost the numbers up, that time most bands seemed to go with a flow. One band's uniform, was the same as another bands, only in a different colour. It wasn't really maybe till about the mid-80s the bands seemed to go for different styles regarding military uniforms and their own sort of thing, you know. It was a gradual thing. And then again, it was a case of what you could afford.
There were no big leaps.
There was no big leaps. It was always a gradual thing.
How did the music begin to change? How did the music begin to tighten up and the repertoire got wider? Who were the sort of people that were influencing this?
Well, from my own point of view, I would be bands like the Pride of Man again and Ballykeel, whose jiggy sort of music and, shall we say, pipe band sort of thing.
Sort of the pipe band combined with the original fife and drum tunes, and then more traditional tunes were all being amalgamated.
Yeah, they were indeed. The Pride of Man were definitely a big influence on the Northern Ireland scene with their style of music. It wasn't a basic Blood and Thunder type of tunes. It was all pipe band orientated. Their drum corps were leap years ahead of anybody else at that time. Belfast bands and probably bands right around the country needed a good wake-up call. And I think this was a big thing because Pride of Man were one of the first bands to start running band competitions. And it was a thing everybody wanted to attend. You might have only at that time of year done 4 or 5 parades, but you always wanted to do the Pride of Man competition. And that there was a very, very big thing.
The Protestant boys probably hold the record for the number of recordings made by a loyalist Blood and Thunder flute band. Yeah. What are your remembers of those early recordings?
The very first CD that we made was a tape called Let It Rip. In those days it was, shall we say, a different way to raise funds. It was done on a basis that you sold, the more tapes you sold, the more profit went to your band. And also it was a good way of getting out your band's name about. In those days, the band wasn't really well known enough, and it was another way of getting your name about. A lot of bands at that time started to make tapes. It was a way of fundraising, and maybe thinking that you were better than another band by playing a certain wee tune or something, things like that. The style developed regarding to recordings too, and it's probably seen as the growth of the band with their different recordings over the year, the way they've changed with recordings.
Yeah, that's very obvious within the door.
Yeah, it is.
Recordings. What elements of the band were encouraging the changes and pushing the changes?
In the early 80s, I'd just say when the likes of the bands like the Black Skull and the Sharpshooters came out, it was inevitable that the Protestant boys too would change, and a lot of young members in the band grew uneasy with, shall we say, the style that the band had at that time. It was either change or go under sort of thing, be left in a rut. So the band started to bring in their own style, drumming started to change. The way that the band had gone about for years didn't seem to be good enough anymore. Everybody had to sort of, shall we say, get their act together. It was a gradual thing too, but slowly but surely it began to change.
When you see the style of your latest recording, No One Likes Us, We Don't Care, and you compare that to Let It Rip, it's like 2 different bands, totally.
It is indeed 2 different bands, but in the early days, the tape like Let It Rip was as much as an experiment as anything else, you know. It was really a new field for us. We're a self-taught band. We've never had anybody come in to teach us anything at all. It too was an experiment. Right up to the present day, like No One Likes Us, We Don't Care, was again an experiment because no CD is made the same. No 2 CDs are made the same, and every one of the CDs that are tapes that we've done has been different, recorded different, probably made different by different men. Now we're on the DVDs. This too is an experiment. Everything seems to be experimental, which maybe a lot of bands lack.
It's all to do with the growing professionalism.
It is. It's trying to be more professionalism these days. Bands need. It is big businesses, and bands maybe lack the commercial side of their own band, which would be a big boost to them.
Saida, one of the biggest criticisms of Belfast band movement over the years probably would be it was always very insular and kept in Belfast. A lot of the bands never left the city for a long time. They felt that was the only their band world started and began in the city. When did the Prod Boys sort of start to spread their wings and venture into Counties Armagh, County Down? County Antrim, obviously, with the Ballymena influence, would have been the first to visit.
Yes, I think you're correct for saying that. The Ballymena incident would be one of the very first times outside Belfast that the Protestant boys started to go to. At that time, everybody seemed to head the Ballymena. It was after that there the bands around the country, sort of Armagh down, started to run their own parades. And it was only until then that the Protestant boys started to venture outside Belfast. Again, this was a slow thing. It took years maybe to get into the style of where they are now. And a lot of the ways that...
then, of course, there was a lot less parades then too, band parades.
There was indeed, yeah. Yeah. Now it seemed to be everywhere in those days. It seemed to be just like big towns you went to, like Newton Ards, Armagh, Lisburn, Ballymena. You never seemed to head into the wee, shall we say, smaller villages like Portavogies or Keady, down that sort of world. It was really not an alien place, but a place where we were never used to going, and we never had many relationships with other bands. Again, it was all gradual. It was only really until we started to run our own band competition from the Oval way back 25, 27 years ago that we realised the potential of the parades, our own parade. It seemed to be that there was more to life than, shall we say, just orange parades, which the bands at that time just seemed to do. It used to be Easter Monday, Easter Tuesday, the 1st and the 12th, the White Rock Parade, the last Saturday in August, and maybe Derry Day. They seemed to be the parades that most bands done. When the competitions started to evolve, it seemed to be a more bigger thing than what an orange parade was.
There are many people within the band movement today actually would consider the whole orange parades, the black parades and the apprentice boys parades as a very small part of the band movement and almost something totally separate. Would the Prod Boys fall into line with that particular view?
I think there's two ways of looking at that side of things, you know. It's certainly the orange, the black and the apprentice boys traditions are all our traditions.
They're fundamental to
They're
why
fundamental,
we're here.
yes, the way we're here. We do criticise them from time to time, question things that we maybe wouldn't have done in the early 80s and things like that. Again, the Orange Order and the Black and the Apprentice Boys are sometimes critical too of the band movement. This is a lot of reasons. We could probably talk forever about that, regarding behaviour, drink, flags. Flags are a very big issue among bands at the minute. It is not the first time that bands have fell out with the loyal orders over flags, and it never seems to go away. And it is true to say that in some cases the bands do not regard the traditional parades with the same look forward to them as much as they used to, because of the other dates that they look forward to.
How many parades would the Protestant boys now take part in during the year?
On average, we would probably do between 45 and 60 parades. This would include band parades, charity advance, memorial parades, and loyal order parades. And it's not unknown for us to do maybe more than that, but on average it's between 45 and 60.
Today's membership of the band, would you perhaps be at a peak from your initial joining?
Yeah, at the minute our band membership at the minute is well up. The Protestant boys have never been known, even in the early 70s, to have membership so high. In the early 70s, the biggest band we probably had was total members would probably be 36. This is more or less doubled at the minute. So I would say at the minute our membership is very healthy, with a good influx of young people coming in. I do admit that most of these are probably relations of people that's already in the band, sons, nephews. It's a closely knit family thing being in the Protestant boys. Although we do welcome outsiders, shall we say, coming into the band.
Can you pinpoint any highlights within your time in the band and perhaps low points as well?
Yes, certainly every band has its high points and low points over the amount of years that they've been in the band. One of the high points for me would probably be when the band played in the Ambition Club beside Ibrox 10 years ago in an indoor event in front of maybe 1,000 people. And the buzz that the band got that night, for me, it'll never be forgot about. The low points of the band was maybe when, shall we say, a lot of people might recognise in their own band, when you're sitting in the winters and what would say you're talking to nobody maybe than 6 men in a superstar.
Yeah.
And everybody can maybe relate to that sort of thing.
Every band can relate to that.
And you're maybe wondering, are you going to have a band next year when things like that happen? But yeah, the low points in the band probably was when there was a split in the band too. But during the winters is a low ebbing point for all the bands. Another high point for the band too was the Mass Band Parade on the Shankill. It too for me was a big turning point with the Protestant boys, because on that day in particular we really struggled to get a band out.
Just remind us what that Mass Parade was for.
Yeah, that Mass Band Parade was really when was for a band from Oma called the Oma Protestant Boys. The week before, or sorry, a fortnight before that, I'd stumbled across a bus that was blown up by the IRA in the Ballygolly Road. This parade was a way of the Barnum world at that time to show a wee bit of respect back to this band who attended these poor and unfortunate soldiers who were blown to bits by the IRA. The crowd at that time on the Shankill Road was unbelievable. Again, this was a turning point for the band, because as I said earlier, we really struggled that day to get a band out. Our numbers were really low. And if it hadn't been for the Mass Band Parade there, I don't think we'd have been able to walk. One thing I really remember about that day in the Mass Band Parade was the 2 dumper trucks that started the parade. And you actually donated by throwing your money into the buckets of the 2 dumper trucks. And this led the whole parade. And it was a thing that really baffled me, but it was a good thing at that time. The interest at that time among bands was unbelievable. There was bands from all over the country. I don't really remember how many bands were at the Mass Band Parade. It must have been nearly 200. The scene of just seeing so many bass drums and bannerets and flags was incredible. The buses were lined from top to bottom in the Shankill Road, and I don't think it's ever going to be done again. Although if it is, I hope it's not for the same reasons.
Perhaps during the late 90s there, within the Ulster youth, some would say there was a bit of a lack of interest in the band movement. There are a lot of people who are beginning to see that change. Would that be the experience of the Protestant boys?
Yes, I agree with you there totally. Again, this is down to the highs and lows in the bands. When your membership wanes, young people coming into the band movement, maybe all our interests, such as nightclubs and girls.
The whole rave culture.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. The rave culture at that time was a big phenomenon, shall we say, at the time. Young people wanted to experiment with different things. We were no different. We lost members through this. Again, I'm glad to say someone drifted back. But I think you're right in generalising that different crazes are reflected in the band's memberships, and I'm glad to say we're past this stage. It's good to see, not only in the own band, but bands right throughout the country, there seems to be a good commitment by the youth coming into the bands.
In what way did the Protestant boys first approach holding their first parade, and how has that developed?
It really came after the Protestant boys always attended the Balmacar Defenders, who at that time were one of the pioneers in the Belfast area, are running their own band parade. The time was probably right to go ahead and hold their own parade.
How many bands attended that original parade?
Originally, our first parade was 14 bands attended.
They would have all been Belfast bands?
Outside, I reckon maybe 2 would have been local bands. Over the years, the parade has built up steadily. It's gone from 14 right up through the years to the 30s, up to the 50 mark, and the highest point we've ever had has been 62. The band itself has grew up with the parade over the years. It's remarkable how much the parade has become well looked to in the East Belfast area.
It's a part of the East Belfast community now.
It is indeed, because there's very few bands now in East Belfast actually run their own band parade, because there's that much work involved in it.
And then the whole policing aspect, the way it has changed over the years, has had a major bearing.
It has indeed. Although I must say, till their pleasure, the police have been very helpful over the years. It's only been one or two occasions that we've had problems, and then these have been sorted out. The parade itself has grew from strength to strength, and the band has grew with it. It is a very, very big part of the band, as indeed any other bands, and hopefully this will go on for quite a long time.
China, where do you see bands heading in the future? How is the band scene going to develop?
How the band's going to develop in the future, this here is probably, you could put this in a number of ways. It's down to the band and the band members themselves to push themselves as far as they can go, or maybe some people would say as far as the police would let them go, or the governments. Are they going to tolerate all these parades all over the country? Are they going to, shall we say, stop putting obstacles in their way? Are they going to help them? Does the local people want to help the bands? Are they fed up with them? It's really a big question. The way I see band parades going in the years to come, hopefully, will be for the best. A lot of bands all over the country have spent years, time, money, effort in developing their own band parade. Sometimes it isn't appreciated by the general public, or indeed the governments and the local councils, who don't seem to help the bands very much at all.
Would you agree that is possibly because they don't understand bands?
Yes, I agree with you there. They're maybe a wee bit, shall we say, ignorant to our culture. Or is it not politically correct these days to help the loyalist band scene? Maybe what they fail to forget is that the amount of money that these parades generate towards businessmen, buses, tourism, things like that there. And this could certainly be developed both by the bands and the councils and the governments. And maybe this is the way to go. Again, another thing they seem to look at, they seem to maybe peaked in certain towns and villages and parts of Belfast with the parades. And what we need to look at is trying to get our own public out, the supporters again. We don't seem to get the same public out supporting the band parades.
It still is healthy though, but it's just to maximise that, you mean?
Yeah. We need to look at that in general and think of the reasons we can do to get our own people out to support us, as well as other different parts of the community. It's now a multicultural community now in Northern Ireland, and all these cultures maybe want to have a look at us. It's because we've over the years looked at them, and maybe this is one way we could go. Yeah,
after all, if the Chinese community is allowed to have a Chinese culture, why is the loyalist community not allowed to have a loyalist culture?
Exactly. We have our own cultures, and it's not, shall we say, all leprechauns and twiddly-dee music. It's
good fight, China.
I think the loyalist community know where we're coming from. Ours is certainly the fife and drum and the lambeg, and it's strange the way it's gone up and down over the years. There's definitely a big upsurge in the loyalist band scene at the minute, and I hope this continues to be a case.
Where do you see the origins of the whole blood and thunder style of flute band? How did that develop over the centuries?
Yes, well, traditionally, that would start with your fife and drum and your lambeg drum as it's handed down from generation to generation. Although I'll have to say that the lambeg drum in Belfast maybe died for a period, although it's pretty strong down in the country areas. Lambegs are probably unknown in Belfast to walk in any parades, although in the countryside they do lead lodges and processions.
That's probably as much as a factor, the fact that the Belfast...
It is indeed. Another fact is the Belfast parade is so long, and it would take more than a superman to carry a long bag drum to the Belfast feeling back.
It would take a countryman to carry it.
Yeah, that's true. And although what it would probably be a big influx that come into the band, where it was the start of the Troubles in the late 60s, early 70s, when it seems that every housing estate and wee village seemed to...
Loyalist youth were searching for a way to express their identity.
Yes, they were indeed. They were looking for something to do in a peaceful manner. It seems that loyalists have to prove their point on a regular basis that they want to remain British, and that the bands are an expression of this. And certainly it's one way of looking at it. In the 60s and 70s, hundreds of, if not thousands of bands were reborn, or born for the first time. Certainly, talking to my grandfather and fathers, there's maybe 4 or 5 times the amount of bands now as there was in the 40s and the 50s.
Definitely a very thriving movement.
Oh, it is indeed. There's no doubt about that. As I said earlier, it seems every housing estate and wee village now can boast maybe 1 or 2 good bands, and this sometimes is not appreciated by everybody, but there is a hell of a lot of people in the band movement and who are involved with it.
What bands do you see in Ulster today as being the bands that are possibly giving direction and guidance for the band movement as a whole? Or indeed your own favourite bands, your own favourite styles playing?
Yeah, there's maybe 1 or 2 bands that come to mind right away. That bands that maybe like Pride of the Hill, who have been around for quite a long time and have been consistently. Yeah, consistently. One of the top of the Blood and Thunder bands in the country. Another band would probably be the likes of Dun and Money from the other end of the country. They're again a large band. Blood and Thunder sometimes goes round in circles in my eyes. When I say that, there seems to be the tunes you maybe played 20 years ago or seem to make a wee re-insurgence. Maybe played it different ways and different drum settings. The traditional stuff seems to wane now and again, but it certainly comes out again. Although the style is maybe, to some people, a wee bit aggressive on the outset, compared to maybe the carnival sort of thing that some people are looking for. Where it is going is another question. It seems to be influenced sometimes by different things that happen, like film scores and, shall we say, pop music. Sometimes nothing additional is played at all, but it doesn't go away. But where it ends up is a good question indeed. I would like to think it would end up maybe more traditional.
Go back to
our roots, because it's where we all come from. And to be honest with you, where are we going?
marching and discipline and style and appearance are very, very important aspects of the Prod Boys style. How much emphasis does the Prod Boys put into making sure those elements are of a very, very high standard?
Yeah, style appearance these days is a big thing in the bands. The Protestant boys of, shall we say, up the ante regarding style and appearance within their own ranks. In the early days, they were just a ramshackle band, shall we say. They weren't any better looking than anybody else. It's really they've came to a full now that style and appearance is a big thing. Each band seems to want to outdo each other regarding doing something different. This is to be admired sometimes, but the cost of this can prove quite an obstacle, you know.
The Prod Boys took a rather unusual step by purchasing a second pair of trousers, the first band ever to do this. What was the motivation behind that?
The Prod Boys maybe talked about this 15 years ago. It seems every time they wanted to go for a new uniform, it was always said, "I wanted to go for white trousers." And then the general talk at that time was, "What about the time we had the brown uniform?" And it always seemed to knock it back, because to me the brown uniform was a big step back for the Protestant boys at that time. It didn't have any, shall we say, buzz to it at all.
Yeah.
It seemed to be a cul-de-sac as the bomb went down at that time. The white trousers was always talked about among the members. You'll never have the balls to do it, shall we say. Can I say that on the radio?
Yes, yeah. You can say that on the radio.
We'll never have the balls to do it, but what I can say is that we really went for it this time. After advice from the tailor, who I must say was very helpful, because I thought he made a try to put us off, saying, "My girls couldn't make this, and you never keep them clean, and they were hard to work with." But we weren't really interested in that. We were looking for the appearance sort of thing.
The initial impact.
Yeah. I was asked one time what made you go for white trousers. Well, again, this would probably be, we were looking like the American Marines sort of thing. When you see the American Marines with all kinds of trousers, light trousers, dark trousers, white trousers, they look very impressive. And it was something that maybe it was the back of our minds. I'm glad to say we think it's worked.
It was a successful experiment.
Yeah, we're doing that, and we're not really finished there. We've another couple of wee things up our sleeve.
You're not going to tell us, China?
We're not going to tell you, but it's a case of watch this space, as I say. But again, it doesn't come, style and appearance doesn't come cheap. It's down to the membership of bands to, shall we say, put your money where your mouth is. Again, this is a great burden in some bands and plenty of members. Without the backing of their families, it wouldn't be possible.
The band movement as a whole has a lot of detractors. People who are constantly putting it down. For the most part, what they put out are misconceptions, but there are some genuine concerns about behaviour, issues, etc. What would your view be on that?
Well, I think there is some issues the band movement maybe need to crack down on. Again, this is up to the individual bands to sort their own members out. Yeah, the drink thing is something that the bands need to keep an eye on. It's something we could all maybe get carried away with.
Yeah, but then we are effectively a youth movement and a youth social movement.
That's right.
To youth culture today, alcohol is an important element of socialising.
Yes, it's a fabric of life today. There's no getting away from that. You can't go about with a big stick controlling people and telling them what to do.
But bands do provide a large element of discipline when it comes to issues like alcohol.
Yeah, they do indeed. I'm glad to say that most bands have their own code of conduct. On the whole, most of them seem to abide by this. It is a big thing. The drink issue will certainly not go away. In many cases, it is a fundraising thing too, the drink thing, on the social side of it. But there is a place for parading and a place for drinking, and they need to keep that in mind.
There are times and places for everything.
Indeed, there's a time and place for everything, and a lot of people over the years, including myself, used to use the band uniform for an excuse. In this day and age, things have changed. There's a lot of people who want to come down hard on the band world. There's a lot of people who would say camera hoppy, and that these wee snaps can be used where we don't need them to be used. Like, say the camera never lies. I don't believe that at all. The camera can be used for what you want it to be used by. But we certainly need to keep an eye on our young folk, on our older folk, with a drink, or this could be your downfall.
The Protestant ways, China, would be regarded by a lot within the banding world to have one of the most progressive and tight and unique styles of drumming for a blood and thunder band in the entire movement. How did that come about, and what way did the Prod boys approach their drum settings?
Yes, I think it's all started really when we first made the first tape called Let It Rip. We were blessed enough to have members who knew a wee bit about drumming. Again, they were all self-taught. Over the years, this again has developed. Today's style and blood and thunder is again maybe not a carbon copy, but sort of way based on pipe band styles. Some bands like to, shall we say, knock the pan out of the drums. Others like to have loose rolls, tight rolls. It is a big thing today. Bands with good drum corps are a reflection of whether you're a good band. In my eyes,
drum corps is a sign, though, of dedication and practice that has went into the band. Would you agree with that?
It is surely. Drummers these days get all the, shall we say, the spotlights. Your drum corps and your bass drummers seem to hug the limelight, as the poor old fluters maybe only come in second all the time. But that's true. But drum styles have developed over the years. They're not just ramshackle no more. They're what shall we say, a tidy wee section of your band.
And a fundamental section.
A fundamental section, yeah.
You mentioned earlier, China, about visiting the Prod boys visiting the Embassy Club. What do you think in general of the band movement in Scotland?
The band movement in Scotland, shall we say, it's a bit topsy-turvy at the minute. There's a lot of things done indoor in Scotland. It's a big thing, the indoor circuit in Scotland, whereas out in Northern Ireland it's more outdoor. It's very widespread. They're not as close-knit as they are over here. Again, this is maybe due to the logistics of the country. Their bands are smaller in many cases. They're not as aggressive as what we maybe are seeing. But then again, they all come over here on the big parades and all, and they're a very big, fundamental, shall we say, part of the parades. And our parades here would be lost without the Scottish band and their honest Scottish brethren. And
what way do you see the general standard in Scotland at the minute?
The general standard in Scotland, I would say, is on the up and up. I think it did wane there for a while. The band standard in Scotland is maybe just like our own standards over here. It dips from periods of years. Yeah, the band scene in Scotland is certainly on a high at the minute. It does dip over the years, just like our own sort of a circuit. Bands like the Black Skull and the Saracen are all good bands, and it's pretty healthy in Scotland.
Other than other flute bands over the years, China, is there any vocal groups or other loyalist music which has played a part in how East Belfast Protestant boys have developed?
Yes, there certainly is. There's a well-known loyalist group called Platoon, and certainly not only for the Protestant boys but many other bands, their vocal tunes have been, shall we say, transferred onto the flute and played by these bands. I think the Platoon have been a really big influence on the band scene this past 20 years.
Tracks like Number One Platoon.
Tracks like Number One Platoon, UDR4, Daddy's Uniform. These certainly are tunes that most bands today play.
Have you any specific favourites, China?
Platoon indeed. It would have to be a Gunrunners. Not only because it was, shall we say, my favourite. It was really a hard tune to get onto the flute, and it took quite a while to get it. But I'm glad to say it worked. But again, this here is really it. Platoon have been a real big part.
When I was 18 years of age, and in the Caution's army I engaged to fight for Ulster against home rule. A muzzle rifle was my tool, and a Covenant Day my first parade, won over 500,000 promised aid. We go to fight the enemy now, so we landed 50,000 guns at Larne. Go to fight the enemy now, we landed 50,000 guns at Larne. That April night I'll never forget, dispersing guns to face a threat throughout the length of our beloved land. The die was cast, we made our stand, but another foe was before us now. Home rule was dead beneath the plough. When across the fronts our division sailed, Britain called we would not fail. Across the fronts our division sailed, Britain called we would not fail. We were gun runners, gun runners. Now the story's told and it's understood of a charge that morning people would, when Ulster's fly their lives they'd give, so that we at home could in freedom live. Well, alas, I fell on the Some's great shore, but not alone, there were thousands more. From every street, town and dale, a father, son, or a brother fell. Every street, town and dale, a father, son, or a brother fell. They were gun runners, gun runners. Yes, gun runners.
One of the most recent developments within the banding community has been the advent of the computer age, China, with the dawn of the internet, etc. How do you feel has this affected the movement? Has it been a benefit or has it slowed us down?
Oh, it's certainly a benefit. So it is. When the computers come out, I was a bit wary of them myself, as I've sat down and used them. I was both in my band and my business. They've been a great asset to the bands. Bands these days are more friendly because of PCs. You speak to people now from all over the country, Scotland, England, who are interested in the band world. It is certainly the biggest leap forward in 100 years regarding the band scene. There is absolutely no doubt about that. You can purchase goods on the internet in the band world. You can sell things. You communicate to people.
You can promote yourself.
You can promote your own. You can promote your own band. It boosts sales if you have anything to sell. It is certainly the biggest leap that's ever going to happen in the banding world for maybe another 100 years. And I don't say that lightly because I really believe that. The only drawbacks in the computer thing is, again, it is also a way of your enemies getting back at you. They can see what's maybe happening in the banding world. It is not a closed shop. It is open to everybody. And again, the banding world is nothing to hide. And
but it's a bit like the camera thing.
It is.
You know, people say the camera can't tell lies. Yeah. As you say, it most certainly can. And in the same way, they can take information out of context.
Yep. But certainly it is. But the close-knit communities that are built around the bands, it is a big asset. Friendships are certainly made.
China, thanks very much for talking to Flute and Drum. We'll just end on a track of your choice, China. Is there any band track or loyalist music track that you consider your favourite?
It would have to be the UDR4. This is a tribute to me and Marma, who were imprisoned falsely over the years, and this is dedicated to them.